Is that the question?
Yeah.
Well, let's start with that.
Yeah.
No, but I loved listening to you explain it because I think the connection thing is so huge. It's like, okay, curiosity is everything. I mean, but so is like connection is
Yeah.
everything. So how do you connect? And I think that that what I bring is like a genuine, authentic curiosity. Maybe not for all things, but for the things that I am, genuinely interested in. Like, I don't have real curiosity over, people who play football. For professionally, right? Like, I'm not that interested in sports. I'm not interested in sports.
Yeah.
But I do love fashion, and I do love going out and dancing and having a good time. Or I used to love that a lot more than I do now. But I still love it. I just don't do it.
Yeah.
And I find that my real curiosities just have always led me to places where those connections are possible and probable in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think we do, like, there is this crazy force that brings people together when they share, a common interest. But if you're not curious, then, or if I wasn't curious, then I don't think I'd be vulnerable and open enough to, like, find myself in those situations. Without the curiosity, the rest of it kind of can't happen.
Yeah, like 0% of it. Yeah.
Because, like I said, I'm not a sports fan, and so I've got zero curiosity, which probably explains why I don't know any athletes.
Yeah. And that makes...
I do know a couple of athletes, but it's because of their love for art, so.
Yeah. No, and that makes perfect sense because it's like, all right, people might, I've read stuff and people say stuff like, Mark is so cool. Mark is the coolest, right? And I'm like, to me, anyone who stays curious, you're gonna, that's a byproduct of it. Cool. Because that's the curious. Whereas if you were like, well, football, hanging out, going to a football game can maybe help me sell some more bags or something like that. And then that's when people stop being cool, when they're doing things that they're not interested in.
Their motives are different. Yeah,
they're not interested, And it's fine to do things to help move the brand or but if you're not interested, it shows, and people can see through it, like your nails is like, no, but it's just like you can see the genuine interest of you learning and delving into it, and enjoying it, and then it'll be something else.
No, yes, definitely, but you're right. I mean, I do become really curious about something that I have a genuine interest for, or and then the passion kind of gets fed, or the interest gets fed, and then it becomes passion or obsession or whatever, and then, like, I ended up, like, really having a nice relationship with this great woman who's Dominican, who speaks very little English, who's got a salon in the Bronx. And, like, that's where this has taken me at this point, and it's just been cool, and it's another artistic expression. So again, the curiosity is great, and it's like one thing feeds the other, and that's where you meet people, you grow, you change, all that stuff can occur, but the curiosity again has to be there from the beginning.
Yeah, and I don't know her, but I can imagine I could try to step in her shoes and be like, people can also sniff out, like, oh, actually, he's genuinely into this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, her name is Yuleni. And yeah, our sessions have become next level. Like, and it's great. It's just great.
Yeah.
And it is real, so that's.
No, again, I could see it in, like, I don't know if I go back to before, I'd see you at a party, like the Christmas parties and stuff, but the era where you're wearing vintage tees all the time.
Yeah.
Like,
and the obsession.
So it's the same. It's the same thing.
there
Every
wasn't.
time I see it, it'd be a different.
That's slightly different. I mean, I'm obsessed with first edition books right now, and
Yes.
and then that would be kind of a little bit more of a good like comparison or analogy, because even though collecting vintage tees required my curatorial, if that's a
Yeah.
word, or me being a curator and like kind of editing through a ton of vintage t-shirts that were available to find the ones that said something about my, or that I connected to because
Yeah.
they were events that I remember, concerts that I remembered, brands that I liked, you know.
Yeah.
But I didn't play much of a creative role in that. So like
Gotcha.
there are obsessions where, you know, I feel like, oh wow, I'm into this, but it's also a creative exercise.
Yeah.
And that's you know, so they're kind of different things. There's a parallel.
Yeah, the T-shirts, that's curating. It's
Yeah,
done.
and the books too. It's
Yeah.
like, right, so these are titles that I remember from being in high school, but you know, I don't have a part in the writing of them, or even, you know,
Yeah.
like nothing about it. It's just kind of curating.
That leads me into, I guess, the second. Well, another question is, when I get asked, what inspires a design or campaign or something that I'm doing with Denim Tears or anything else I've done in the past, it usually comes from a book or film, and songs too. You know, and just
Mhm.
you know, I imagine similar for you, or not. I don't.
Yeah, it can be. I think if I like went way back in time and I don't know, maybe this is I sometimes feel like I'm apologizing for this answer, which is it's really fashion that inspires me.
Yeah.
So I don't think I'm the most original talent
Yeah.
out there, but I offer something, and I mean obviously I offer something, but it's fashion that really inspired me to be a fashion designer.
Yeah.
And it's the history of fashion that inspires a lot of the choices that I make, you know, in making or creating clothes. So, you know, I'm very good with references to a certain period, even a certain designer, and a certain aesthetic or a certain approach, you know. So like all of my heroes, you know, had one or many of those qualities. Like, you know, it was their approach to making clothes that inspired me more than any one particular thing they made, or the innovation of a certain person, or a color palette of another person, or, you know. So I think that I definitely get inspired by films I've seen, past and present, of books I've read, music I've heard, or the style of certain music, you know, like the look of grunge, the look of hip hop, you know, the looks that came along with music. I always used to say that I learned about punk because I was seduced by the clothes. It was like I really was into punk, and I used to go hear all these punk bands, but it was the look of the punk. You know, the kids that were into punk, the way they looked is how I got into a club to hear a band. You know what I mean? And the album cover art, that's how I got to hear the music. You know, so it was still aesthetic or visual that brought me into it. But I do think, I'm inspired by a lot of different things: art, music, fashion, literature. But fashion really is the drive.
And you'd say, like, you studying the different disciplines of different designers and also not just the designers, because designers lead, but also can be led by the era that it's in. You know, like Eves, he ushered in an era, but then there are other designers that were part and parcel but they played the game of what the customer wanted, maybe, and then they're still great at it and beautiful. And then there are people like Eves that did something radical, like putting women in pants, so on and so forth, you know. And then it's like studying those different disciplines, whether from seeing it in magazines or reading a book, and then you're able to put that through your filter and make what you make, you know. And I find that whether it's your Mark filter, Tremaine filter, whoever's filter, I do find that's originality, because it's like, it's all a shared. People get so caught up in like, this is my thing and that thing, and I'm like, to me, it's humanity. It's all shared. As much as there's so much talk about well, that's my thing and that's my thing. But I'm like, we're humans, and if you generally study something
Yeah.
and then put it through filter, then you're adding something to it. You're not just appropriating and taking away from it, in my opinion.
Well, I think I would tend to agree with your opinion. It may not be in some places the popular opinion, but I totally agree. I mean, I think sometimes of what Warhol said about making art, I mean, he was criticized by some for what he called art, but he was like, oh, if you change 3 things, it's yours.
Yeah.
And it could be 2 things, but I always like that idea of like, we've got this sponge in our head, right? And it's absorbing all this stuff that like kind of we have this primitive connection to. But by the time it goes through the sponge and gets wrung and all that kind of stuff, it's what comes out is yours. You're not reproducing something.
Yeah.
You are absorbing it and filtering it. And when it's done, I mean, I've tried actually to reproduce like a Saint Laurent jacket with a Saint Laurent shoulder and we can't do it without taking it apart and actually copying it. So even when I want to reproduce something, it's like it still comes out by our pattern maker with our seamstresses with my idea of what that thing is that I was looking at. It's just like other than physically taking it apart and copying it, it's just not possible.
100%, because like I remember you gave me a book from the auction you did.
Yeah, the Sotheby's one.
Sotheby's auction, and you wrote what you wrote. And it stays with me to this day is, enjoy the book, Tremaine. Not the devil. God is in the details.
Yeah.
God is in the details, and so the details come out through lived experience. So even if you try to reproduce a thing, it's going to be different.
It's different, and context plays a part in what people creative output, right? There's the context and the time. So I always think, or I often think, sometimes people love to dissect things and take them apart in order to prove or state something they want to state in this time.
Yeah.
But they're removing it from a bigger picture, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, in the end of the day, we look at things and we say, I like it or I don't like it. But for some of us who love fashion so much, it's like we get down on what it is that we're looking at. It's like, the reference is there, the shape is right, the proportion. Like, we're not just seeing it at face value. We're seeing it at face value, but we see the substance in the style. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But also it's the context that in a different moment may not appeal to you or me.
Yeah. The time.
Where you're at.
Yeah.
When you see it, what you know, all those things play a part.
Yeah, what you've gone through.
Yeah,
and
experience,
and then the thing landing at the right time. Like even for me, my first experience with MJ was on the street, and this is probably, I don't know, 1999 or 2000, maybe 2001. When did the Mercer store open?
God, I have no idea.
Okay. So I walk in the store.
95 maybe?
Okay.
96? I don't know, 95, 96? 97?
Okay, so this is 99, 2000, and I'm walking the Mercer store, and I see a hoodie, and I touch the hoodie. I'm like, this don't feel like no hoodie I ever felt before, and it's what you're wearing now, silk and cashmere.
Remains of it.
And I think it's like that. You were talking about this earlier, where I saw something that was very familiar to me, sportswear. I grew up playing sports. I grew up Jamaica, Queens, wearing wore hoodies every day. A zip-up hoodie, but it felt just the change of the texture, just that filter that you saw. I imagine you you're like, okay, you guys might have had a Russell Athletics hoodie or something, champion. Like, well, what if we made it in this fabric?
Yeah.
And then, for me, especially at that time, this is 1999, 2000, it was revolutionary to me, a sweatsuit that was done exactly like sweatpants. I didn't, and someone's watching, it's like, It's a cashmere, but it didn't exist then, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to see something that was not, what's the word? I don't want to say fashionized, but it just looked almost exactly like what you'd see in models.
Yeah.
But then in fabrication, you would never imagine seeing and you continue to do that with like the M65 beaver lined and these pieces that were luxified, these staples. I don't know. It was just, that's what I was one of the first things that really caught me way back.
I have a good friend who's also a designer. I think you know him. I have this word which we use like a lot in the studio. It's like pretending, and what it is like when you do something that you recreate something so authentically, but you've changed the content of the yarn, and we say like, oh, it's pretending to be, you know, a Carhartt. And it's like, it's totally not a Carhartt. Like the canvas is being made in Italy and the distress and the trompe l'oeil and the whole thing. But it's pretending, meaning that you're trying to get as close to evoking that, you know, that thing. But I think the 90s, like also like when you were speaking, I think there was so much, again, that context was so important then, because there were things like with grunge where like we made a plaid shirt which wasn't really a flannel, it was printed on silk to look like flannel and then washed, so it kind of felt like a worn flannel. But context, a lot of clothes I think at that point had that thing of like, there's nothing new or really interesting about a flannel, but a flannel like worn over a like destroyed woman's silk slip, you know, became like this new thing. So it wasn't about the newness of the pieces. It was about all of a sudden the context and the kind of irony or the perversity, which I think was very much about like what happened with like, you know, 90s clothing, you know, that was so interesting. And that's why it was anti-fashion. It was like literally looks comprised of non-fashionable clothes. And then you had like Margiela, who was doing like, you know, his version of anti-fashion, but it was deconstructing all of those kind of classic fashion or classic clothing. Yeah. Right.
That makes you think of like, took me forever for a lot of reasons, but I finally finished Beautiful Fall this year. And towards the end, Yves is talking about how he feels. I think he said this in the 80s, but he was saying there's nothing going to be nothing new in fashion. Not that it can't be good, but that everything's been made, and now it will just be what you just said. Like someone like Margiela is going to come along and start, remixing. You know, almost, you know, kind of, I don't know, maybe akin to, you know, they didn't have any instruments in the Bronx because of social systemic issues. So then we're using turntables and samplers.
Right. Yeah.
And then we're getting beats and stuff from this James Brown and Clive Stubblefield, and we're sampling it.
Yeah.
And then it's new, but it's refracted. Yeah, it is new.
It is new. I mean, I remember with Malcolm McLaren back in his Duck Rock days, where, you know, he was just so blown away by DJs using the needle of the record to create like a kind of fiddle, you know, like, and he would call that out and say like all the scratching and stuff. It was like, how incredibly brilliant is this to use the needle of a what is that thing called, the arm or what,
the arm,
and what to move the record against the needle to create a sound was so incredible. But that's how things, necessity is the mother of invention, the expression. But also I remember Carl saying, Lagerfeld saying once, you know, that there are only so many notes in music, it's just how you put them together that makes a new song. And it's like, it's kind of same of everything, you know, there's just so much or so many, but that isn't a problem. It just means you got to put them together differently.
Because you always see, not that, you know, someone would be remiss not to pay that much attention to headlines on the internet, but like, who needs another bag? Who needs another shirt? Who needs another thing? And it's like, who needs another restaurant? Who needs another? Who needs to have a? You could go on and talk
Who
about
needs to use the word need, because it's not about that at all.
Yeah.
I just had a conversation about this too. It's like, why do we go to the lengths we go to wear like things that are difficult to wear or uncomfortable or whatever? Well, it's not practical. It's not practicality. That word's left the conversation.
So, yeah.
It's desire, right?
Yeah.
So like need and practical are just not words that I feel like I need it because I love it so much.
Yeah.
That when I use the word need, like I need those sneakers at Balenciaga, it's because I want them so much, and then I'm not going to sleep at night until I get a pair of those.
Yeah. No, totally, and
you know that need. You feel it all the time too.
No, all the time, and I was like with my my family now, my wife's family this weekend, and her stepmom, so lovely, was like, "So when did you get into fashion?" And I was like, "I can't even tell. Like, I can't. Like, I literally have. When I was 6 years, when I was in first grade, my parents took me to a pet store, and to get a cat, and he said, choose a cat. I chose a cat, and the cat was a calico with all the stripes, spots, whatever. And they're like, you gotta name her. And I was like, I named her immediately. Named her Fashion. I was 6 years old, but the cat reminded me of my mom's dresses, or the dresses in her magazine. So when did you? It's like, it's just a feeling that some people have, and it's interesting. Not even some people, because it's like people will say like fashion people who are into fashion, but I get the most questions or compliments from people who you would say don't care about fashion. Do you know what I mean? Like someone who is like would say, "Oh, I don't care about fashion," or I would never spend that much. But those just seem people that are always the most intrigued about what other people are wearing in some ways. Not all the time, but I find it interesting.
It is.
It's something that we all care. Everyone cares at some level, even not caring, because it's just like you made it because it's choice. For people who obviously they're people of no means, so obviously excluding people of no means that are struggling, but people of means, you're making a choice. Even those who feel that they aren't and they don't care about fashion.
I think we can be disruptive in a different in a different landscape or to a different people, like meaning outside of like the fashion people. So I think when we think of ourselves as like a little world, that there's like us and them, then we are disruptive. You know what I mean? Like I've come out of my shrink's office, in a pair of high heel Rick Owens with a Celine leopard coat and like God knows what else I was wearing that day. And like, this guy who is like dealing with the garbage and the truck, was like, you look cool, man. First of all, I didn't expect it coming from him. I expected more to be bullied by this person or called, an insult. But I could tell he was, I disrupted his, but in a way that delighted him. And it was not, it wasn't a joke. I wasn't the butt of a joke. So that can happen. And when it does, it's great because it's true. It's like, I'm glad that I brought my joy into your world. You were
like a bird flying backwards in the sky.
It's like, whoa, But and fashion people, to take not to take anything away from them, can sometimes be too jaded to extend that hand and say like, you look cool. It's as opposed to taking your inventory and saying like, oh well, they have that Celine shirt or they have that. You know what I mean? So it's like fashion people can be somewhat jaded and maybe envious or something. And maybe that person who sees the bird fly backward doesn't have envy, and doesn't also know. So so maybe it's more heartfelt.
Maybe the person who, that guy who's doing sanitation is like, I would never but I know that takes. This guy doesn't give a fuck and he looks great. I know what that takes to. Maybe he understands. Whereas the fashion person might just be like, oh, you're wearing.
Oh, those Rick boots? Like, when are you going to get over that era?
Where the person who's not indoctrinated. Because that's the thing, right? When you know too much, you can let it jade you. You can let it could take the joy out of things, Again, that goes back to curiosity. That guy was curious. you know?
I know that, I had the like kind of reaction of a kid. Like it was either liked or didn't like, but just was free to express it, without any weight or burden. It was something you just said reminded me. Oh, but then, so I was leaving my shrink's office, that happens. And the following week, I go back to my shrink, next appointment, and I tell him what happened and how happy I was, when this experience happened. And he said, well, you're very lucky you live in a bubble where you're safe to look like that. And I was like, oh, yeah, to some extent, he's right. Like, I think it was like I was wearing pearl, like all of it, and a barrette in my hair. Like it was a look. Yeah. And I mean, he wasn't trying to take anything away from the experience, but I think he was trying to help me appreciate how kind of lucky I am that I could express myself like that, and not only have that reaction. Like if I were somewhere else, that reaction may not have happened, and I may not have been able to express myself that way without fear of like, danger or something.
Oh no, I mean,
so it's all that.
We know too many stories of it, of all types of friends who have been verbally and physically hurt for the way they dressed or
how they present themselves,
or being holding someone's hand, or kissing, making out with someone, dancing with someone, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, but then also, it's beautiful your shrink brought that up, because for me, the messed up, dark parts of the world are the cold water to help me enjoy the vignettes of happiness or vignettes of fun, because the light world's pretty brutal.
Right. No doubt.
100% brutal all the time. And there's for me, this is my opinion, there's vignettes of happiness. Whether it's making stuff, mostly it comes from laughing for me. The vignettes of happiness and stuff like that.
My shrink, who I love, obviously at this point in the conversation, that's pretty clear.
Yeah.
He calls them transcendent moments of joy.
Yeah.
And I've really adapted that, because during the collection process, there's so many obstacles, there's so many things that go wrong, there's so many stresses, there's so many frustrations. But when you're in the fitting room and something is like come along to the point where you can see that it's going to be good, there's that moment, and it's short, or the laughter in another situation where you just think like, there's that moment of joy. I can't hold on to it. I can't make it happen, but I have it, and I can always remember that that's what life is, like these, transcendent moments of joy.
No, definitely, and it's like, it is, man, you hit it, because like making clothing can be so, I don't know, there's so much noise around it now. I guess, that's what I'm interested. That leads to another question. All right, so and this goes to the 40 years, so I always say to myself, I wish I would have, I'm grateful for everything I have that's come from my career to this point. But I would have been I was like, man, imagine like, I don't know, someone like, I'm not comparing myself, but Tom Ford, Gucci era, only person that would stop him or know him and know who he was someone who read the magazines. Other than that, he's fashion designers lived anonymous lives compared to now, where it's become so, this level, there's this energy around fashion that's just like about everything but the clothes.
Yeah. Often, yeah. I mean, the internet, again, without blaming the internet or social media or whatever, we live in a time where there is a very different, it's a very different world. And it's not good or bad, it just is.
It's just different, yeah.
It is, and you're right, I am very aware of people that I don't even know having an opinion over what I do and how I am in the world.
Yeah.
But I still don't really know them. And I don't know if they're bots or if they're real people. I don't know what they do with their time or their day. I'm not really that curious in finding out, because I just am not. I have other things to do.
Yeah.
But we live in a world where that's all so present.
And that's what I was getting at, is like, what was it, and maybe you just answered half the question, is living pre-internet, where the critique was from Kathy Horn.
Even
from 5 people.
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the world, the
Yeah.
critique. And then the ultimate critique was from the customers,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah.
Can we keep the lights?
totally.
That was the ultimate. That was really the only.
Well, that's the unglamorous part to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Is like the customer actually, if they don't spend the money, you ain't in business. You know.
Regardless of what anyone wrote,
Yeah.
comment section says,
It's funny. I have a good anecdote for this.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of an anecdote about this. So I lived on the Upper West Side in this great building on 71st Street, and I had these two neighbors, well, they were husband and wife, and they lived a few floors below me, and they were very like attractive. They seemed very like with it. They weren't like, I mean, there was nothing about them that was either super cool or not cool. They just looked, you know, they were nicely dressed. They seemed to be, I don't know, cool. I don't know if it was Kathy Horn. It was the person before her, Amy. She was the critic, the big New York Times critic. Her name's just escaped me.
I forget the name.
It was
as well.
before Kathy Horn.
Yeah.
And she was the critic, and it was the New York Times. So there wasn't a newspaper that was more credible, and there wasn't a journalist who was more important. Oh, it's going to come to me. She was a big champion of Tom's. But anyway, she reviewed one of my shows, or she reviewed many of them, but there was this one particular show she reviewed. And, you know, the day that the review came out in the New York Times, I think it was the Thursday, that was the big day, like the style day. So there was a headline, which was not very positive. You know, it was quite, I read it as super negative, but it was just negative, you know. And these people who live below me, I mean, I thought, oh, they're going to read this review and they're going to be like, oh, we're sorry to hear that Amy, whatever her name is, was so down on you. So, and I saw them in the elevator and they said, oh, we saw the Times this morning, great review. They didn't read the review. They just saw that my name was in the headline.
That's it. It was like,
so
Mark Jacobs, New York Times.
Mark Jacobs bombs.
You
but
made a kid.
Like, you know, it was just like, oh, your name is in Thursday New York Times.
Yeah.
You've made it. Like, they didn't read the review. They didn't know what she was talking about. Nothing.
Yeah.
Amy Spindler.
Okay. Yeah.
So that just goes to show you, you know.
So is that something you talked? I could, you know, I do therapy too from time to time, and I love my therapist. And one thing she said to me, she said, Tremaine, why are you listening to the loudest voices in the room? Why are you not listening to the majority voices? She's like, your business is working, right?
Yeah.
She's like, she said to me, what do people say to you in the street? My wife said that to me too. She said, you know, there's some hysteria online about whatever stuff. And Andy said, a genuine question, but I thought she was trolling me. She says, anyone ever come up to you in the street and say the stuff people saying in the comments? I said,
No.
People just want to take pictures and tell me stories and give me. People are just lovely.
Yeah.
Like it is actually consistently beautiful, regardless if I'm in the mood for it or not. You know, I do my best to be in the mood for it because I know how much courage it takes for someone.
Absolutely.
I never had that courage to go. I was always trying to, oh, that's corny, or they're gonna think I'm not cool. So I'd see, you know, growing up in New York, I'd see everyone, and I'd never go up to anyone. So when a kid comes up to me, I actually really, when I'm in my higher self, I see the courage that it takes. But anyway, to answer Andy's question, I said, no, people are just lovely to me in person, and you know, and it's just like, it's interesting that whether it be Amy in the New York Times or a comment that we
Latch onto
that sometimes minority voice.
Well, often minority, I think, as Andy said, or as your shrink said. But I do think, I mean, this gets like in some of my therapy and as well as my, in things I've learned. I don't know why this is true of me. I don't know why it may exist in you or other people in other fields. But I'll walk into a room, there could be 12 people, and I'll think those two don't like me, you know, and not see the other 10.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I'm drawn that way. I don't know what my wiring is that makes me feel like, and then also to obsess over what I believe those two people are thinking about me.
Yeah.
So like it's false evidence appearing real, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, and it happens all the time online. I mean, if I do read all the comments on an Instagram post, you know, there'll be out of 150 comments, there's 140 that are positive, and then 10 people who I don't know, who don't even have a profile picture, they're going to tell me about how stupid I am, how lame I am, how this I am, how that I am, and you know, that is going to ruin my day. Not the 140 who said like, you know, we love you, this is so great, and I got an MJ bag for Christmas, and you know, none of that stuff. So I have been checking myself a lot lately, which is that I am going to hold on to that like 2% of hate, but I'm giving myself a time limit. You can obsess over this hate until this afternoon, and then it's over. Let it go.
Wrap.
You know?
Yeah, it's a wrap. No, it's a powerful thing too, because it's something I've been working on just on by myself is validation index.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And what do I garner validation from?
Yeah.
You know, and it's something, you know, I've come into, you know, I'm on my second career. I had a whole career in retail, you know, from stock to retail manager. Now I'm doing design and creative direction and all this stuff. So I'm on my second career as an adult. And, you know, I think over the last 5 years, I had to really rearrange my validation index. And I what started me down the path was my friend Yasin. I did a collaboration with Alvin Ailey with Champion, and I was really proud of it. And I'm on the phone with him, and I'm like, yeah, and you know, did this so people know that I wanted to do a Champion collab with Alvin Ailey to show dancers are elite athletes, just like Alvin Ailey's just as important as Michael Jordan or Brett Favre or any, you know, athletes. And Yasin said, what makes you think Alvin cared maybe he just cared about the people that cared about what he did. He didn't care that people saw him as this on the same level as someone else. How do you know that? How do you know what his validation index was? I was like, damn, you know? And since then, I've really been tinkering with that in my brain, and I try to impart that on people who are wanting that validation. Even so, you know, even from me, like, you know, kids would be like, what do you think of my thing? I'm like, you really shouldn't care what I think. You know what I mean? Not saying it but like...
Right. But that would be nice. I mean, to not care, but...
It's hard.
I'm suspicious of people who say they don't.
Yeah.
I'm suspicious because I think it's human. It doesn't mean that it's... Like, it shouldn't be what drives me. Or that I prefer it not be the thing that drives me.
You should care. Right? It's still neat. It's still neat. It's still cool when someone...
But part of me does want you to love me. You know what I mean? That's part of me. But if without your love... Am I going to be paralyzed, or am I going to stop doing what I'm doing? You know, then that's where it gets like that openness or that curiosity is also part of that thing of like, you know, these are all parts of me, and I can have all these feelings at the same time. Maybe I don't act on all of them, or maybe I don't let them, you know, force me or guide my life. You know.
Nah, totally. I agree. Yeah, I agree with you.
But validation, it's like, you know. I don't know. I'm sure our experiences are different, but I remember kind of dealing with that thing of like when I made things or when I acted a certain way, I got like applause from my grandmother, or not a physical applause, but you know, the love or the adoration or whatever. So, you know, at an early age, I kind of, I got, my wires said like, you do good, you make something people like, and that means love, you know? It's like, okay, well, this is real, like, therapy 101, you know? Like, of course, these patterns were established, you know, when I was very soft. And so, like, then you take
and that's how you get hardwired.
Yeah.
No, it all goes back to that, you know? I'd say so the same, you know, just parents really appreciating the things I did, big or small.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Right?
You know? It's a beautiful thing. I was very lucky for it. Last thing, you know, something like it was really for me, watching your career from afar as a fan, from a young age, was besides like the prowess of design, but then your inclusion working with people. Again, I had never seen that before, and that's a part of this 40th anniversary. But really, forget the 40th anniversary. Just you as a person and your brand, MJ, is just, and when you're at LV, just collaborating with people. I think at that time you gave a lot of space to different people and artists. And where did that? Was it just Eureka, or was it like? Was it like, oh, I don't know. Maybe you're like, oh, I saw Vivian Westwood and Keith Haring did a thing together back in. I don't know. Like, what was the inception for you to start working with people and all different? It wasn't just the art. I'm not just talking about the artist collab.
Yeah.
Doing jewelry with Pharrell, working with Ye. All the things, even the things people don't know, little things people don't know about that.
Yeah. It's like there's a few. Well, there's one answer, but there's a lot of parts to it, I suppose. So what's weird, I did this thing with Pharrell where we spoke to each other quite a bit. And he was very, he was super, super kind, and kind in that he was very outspoken about what our collaboration meant to him and how important it was for him on different levels, And I said something which I'm going to say now, and I meant then, and I meant that, and I mean now, is that I feel like my choices, the things that I do, the people I want to work with, are just very instinctive. It really has nothing to do. Like, there isn't really a lot of there's no mastermind plan. And when you said Eureka, I first thought Eureka, but Eureka sounds like the exclamation to having solved a problem, and it was not a Eureka moment working with him or anyone before that. You mentioned Vivian and Keith. When I went to Vuitton, the Vivian Westwood Keith Haring collaboration was amazing, and I loved that. And it was great because I thought so many things that Vivian has done have been brilliant, and before they timed and all that. But when I first started thinking of collaborating with other creatives, whether they were photographers or whether they were designers or whether they were musicians, it was because of actually, I was, found myself in Paris, and I thought about a time where Schiaparelli worked with Jean Cocteau and Salvador Dali, and where Picasso did sets for Chanel. And I thought, Europe, to me, as a New Yorker, looking at Paris and Europe as so romantically as this place that we will never know as Americans or as people from North America. I just thought wow, there was such a creative society of people who shared ideas. This one was a fashion designer, that one was a surrealist, that one was making avant-garde music, that one was singing opera, and it was they worked together, and it didn't seem like anybody was having a eureka moment or it was calculated. They were just exchanging ideas and coming up with things that were creative, right? Community. And I felt like that was my job at Vuitton because it wasn't my name on the door. Maybe I just need to create a creative community. And so anyone who I came across who struck a chord creatively, like when I first saw Takashi's work, I was like, oh my God, this work's amazing. I want to ask him if he'll do something. And then when Emma came back from this concert where she met Pharrell, she was like, oh, he wants to do sunglasses. Let's call him up and do it. It was very just like that. There was no master plan. It wasn't calculated.
Wasn't marketing.
No, it was okay, Nico and Pharrell are coming up. Let's do it. It's okay. There was no research on my part. It was just all right.
Yeah, you wasn't oh well, kids are into these guys.
Yeah,
so. Yeah.
No, there was no math. It was just heart. There was no math.
Yeah, and that's the wonderment in it, right?
Yeah.
That there was no math, and we need to make money to keep the lights on, but at what expense? At what expense of who we are and what we create?
We'll bring it back to the curiosity part of this conversation. This curiosity is such a childlike quality, and when you can dial back to that place where you weren't worried about what she's going to say, what he's going to say, what they're going to say, what the accountant's going to tell you, when you're lucky enough to arrive back at that place, then you just do. But it's hard to be that free because you can't, it just has, you have to really be in that space, I think.
And
Burdened.
and protect, and like figure out a way to protect yourself from the math people.
Yeah. Math people are tough.
That they, without them knowing it, they say and do things that can really, forget just obstruct the creative process, hurt.
Yeah.
Because you're pulling something from like literally your heart.
Yeah. On certain days, I have empathy for the math people, because I also I've caught myself saying like, well, we're from different worlds. We're on the 7th floor and they're on the 11th floor.
Yeah.
And 11th floor people are not creative.
Yeah.
7th floor people are creative.
Yeah.
They're just numbers people. Then I think like that's not empathetic, and I don't want them to have that attitude about us.
Yeah.
So what I have to do
we don't
is
want
say
them to be like they're the crazy creatives that don't care about.
They love numbers. They're super excited to see spreadsheets. Like that's what turns them on, and to sort of say like it's not what turns me on, but that's okay, right?
So here's the eternal question that I know anyone who makes stuff for and that makes stuff for sale is the math people always, they look at what you did last year, or they look at something that did really well and they're like, okay, you got to do another one of those. And it's like, I don't know how I did that. Like, I know how I know what I did.
See what happened.
I know how I made the thing, but I don't know why I connected with people.
Yeah, right. Well, welcome to the math people world, which I mean, fair enough. They can't see that these things or these connections are divine. You know what I mean? They can't see that. It's not their vocabulary. They didn't learn. That gift didn't get given to them.
Yeah.
Like they have other gifts.
They have other gifts.
Right. And I know, because I've been in that position you're describing at Vuitton.
Yeah.
Where, God bless Mr. Arnaud, he gave me this incredible opportunity. But, we did a collaboration, and then, he'd be like, well, we need another artist collaboration. I'm like, but there isn't another artist work who's turning me on the way to God she did. I was like, this doesn't happen every 6 months. It's just not the way it is. And he's like, well, what about this one? What about that one? I said, well, we can collaborate. From my experience, I was like, well, we can collaborate with any of the people you've mentioned, but my heart's not in it.
Yeah.
And I said, and the reason we all gave so tirelessly and made this really beautiful thing is because we all wanted it to happen. Not like, oh, do something, put that artist's name on a bag. That ain't the same. It isn't the same.
It isn't the same, and people can feel it.
Oh, yeah. Like, I mean, especially those really, really, really special people who like something that they love has a pulse. It's like, boom, boom, and then they see it and they're like, that got made with love. That has integrity. That has authenticity. And for those people, like that's the thing of like, I don't care how much it hurts to wear it. I don't care how much it costs to buy it. Like, I gotta have it.
Yeah.
Because it's got all those things. It's got the authenticity, the integrity, the aesthetics, all of it.
Yeah. And I'm not doing a segue.
What is a segue?
No, I'm just saying, when I saw you walk into your 60th birthday party.
Oh, yeah.
And
Charlie's.
You had on the tiny tote bag.
Yeah.
So I had been asked to do the collaboration already. And then I was thinking, actually, I wanted to do something with the cashmere hoodie. Before I was working in my own, before even sending something over to you guys, I wanted to do something with the cashmere hoodie and sweatsuit. And then when I saw you walk in, I was like, no, I want to do, and I was like, he's wearing it. He loves this.
I do love it.
And so when I saw you come in with it, I remember you had on, we both had on the same thing.
Yeah.
I had on
I had
on the blue,
I had the blue, and I had the red, right?
Red on.
Yeah.
And you had the bag, and I'm like, he's wearing this bag. It's his birthday today. He's wearing this bag. He loves this bag.
Well, I didn't know I was going to a birthday.
I know, but you're just like.
But I was wearing that bag a lot. It's funny about that bag because I didn't do it. I mean, I had done things that said "the" as like a way to speak about them. There was we tried to do this revisited mark by mark thing where it was "the" instead of "by."
Yeah.
And so I had a lot of connections to it. But like that bag, it's funny. There are those rare moments where I mean, there's this product that I feel like, again, has integrity, it's authentic, I love it, and it's democratic and more it's not affordable, but it's more affordable than most of the stuff we do for like the runway.
Yeah.
You know, and I just think like that, you can't, like, that's the same thing about the collaboration. Why can't you do another one of those tote bags? Like, it's like, you know, like they just don't come up. Like, let's face facts, kids. The two bags we know from Hermes are the Birkin and the Kelly. Hermes didn't churn out another iconic bag every 6 months.
No, those bags came out how many years ago?
Right. And Chanel had a quilted, like whatever the number is on that bag, it's a quilted matelassé bag. And Carl would be the first one to admit it. He'd say, like, Chanel didn't even design that bag. That was a knockoff of a German manufacturer. That's what Carl told me.
Yeah.
And I just thought, like, you know, this is so perfect. Chanel herself didn't come out with an iconic bag. Every 6 months.
No. Yo, and it's like, why are we tasking ourselves and the people we work with tasking us to keep coming up with stuff, you know? And it's just like, it don't just happen like that.
It doesn't happen. But
and that's why I wanted to combine the cotton reef, and also it was because it was you wearing the bag, and then that photo that Nick took of you wearing the jeans. You had the green Rick boot and
that's a great picture.
Beautiful picture.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? This is what me and Mark are doing right now.
Yeah.
Because obviously there's so much history, and I'm such a, you know, MJ file. And that would have been great too. But I was like, I wanted to do something right now.
Yeah.
That people will. I see that bag every day. So that's the thing. I see that bag every day, and I see the jeans every day. So I was like, oh man, let's combine. You know what I mean?
No, that's great. I mean, you know, there's nothing wrong with, like, I don't want to say obvious seems like a put down, and it's not, but there's nothing wrong with taking two things that you feel good of that say something about you, putting them together and saying, here, that's it. Like, it doesn't need to go like hugely deep. We don't need to scour the earth for a reason that these two things should be together.
Yeah. It just, other than it feels good.
It's like, feels good, feels right. Yeah. This is him, this is me. Let's put it together and enjoy. I mean, you know, we did the Sprouse one, and I think it brings something that was a gift that Sprouse did to me. You know, he wrote the Serenity Prayer to me backwards when I was getting sober, and I gave that, and you know, nobody's been allowed to do a Sprouse collaboration. Like, the family says no, and he let us do it. The brother Brad let us do it. You know, so we have these things, and I like that it's the tote. Futura did his version of it. You know, and it's great. It's just great because it means it's going to be out there in the world, and people are going to see it, and people are going to get to enjoy it. So the cashmere hoodie, not so much.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, I'll get it, I'll have it, but
it's
a pretty pricey item.
Pretty pricey item. Reaches less people,
and it's less of a sign of saying, like, we did this together, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Whereas doing something that more people can touch, that it's it feels more. Both things are powerful in different ways.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, but this is populous, and it's beautiful, and thank you for talking.
Thank you for talking.
It's always fun.
Always fun.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Good?
Beautiful?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Thank you, man. I love you, man.
I love you too. That was fun.
Yeah.
That was fun. These things are good. Like, they're fun. Like, when you know.
I love talking. You know what I mean?
Me too. I'm a talker, in case you didn't notice.